The massive arena stretched across 3 kilometers of crystalline floor, its walls rising so high that atmospheric processors kept the air breathable at the top levels. 80,000 beings from across the galaxy had gathered to witness what many believed would be the final attempt to tame the most dangerous creature ever captured. The Krillian war beast stood in the center of the arena, its 6 legs planted firmly on the ground like living pillars of destruction. Each leg was thick as an ancient earth redwood, covered in armor plating that had evolved over millions of years to resist the most powerful weapons known to science. The creature's body rose 40 meters above the ground, a mountain of muscle and bone that could level entire city blocks with a single charge. Its 3 heads swayed slowly, each one the size of a small spacecraft. The middle head bore the largest eyes, glowing with an intelligence that unsettled even the bravest warriors. The left head carried sensors that could detect movement from kilometers away, while the right head housed the creature's most terrifying weapon, a sonic roar that could shatter reinforced steel and liquefy organic matter at close range. Admiral Vexithera of the Galactic Council stood in the observation deck, her 4 arms crossed as she watched the preparation below. Her blue-scaled face showed no emotion, but inside, she felt the weight of failure pressing down on her shoulders. 67 of the galaxy's greatest warriors had already tried to subdue this beast. 67 had failed. "The Krillian homeworld burns while we waste time with these exhibitions," muttered Commander Zektor beside her. The insectoid warrior's mandibles clicked nervously as he spoke. "Perhaps we should simply destroy the creature and accept our losses." Vexithara's primary eyes fixed on him with cold disapproval. "That creature is the key to understanding Krillian biology. Their entire species shares a neural link with these beasts. Kill this one, and we lose our only chance of stopping their invasion fleet before they reach the core worlds." The truth was more complicated than she let on. The Krillians had unleashed dozens of these war beasts across the Outer Rim territories. Each one was virtually indestructible, capable of single-handedly devastating entire star systems. But this particular beast, captured at tremendous cost 3 months ago, showed signs of something unprecedented. It could be reasoned with. Initial scans revealed that the creature possessed not just animal intelligence, but something approaching sentience. If they could establish communication, perhaps even control, they might turn the Krillians' own weapons against them. It was their only hope against an enemy that had already consumed 43 inhabited worlds. The arena floor shimmered as the next challenger was transported in. A collective gasp rose from the crowd as they recognized the figure materializing in a column of silver light. Korthak the Unbreakable stood 7 feet tall, his red skin marked with the ritual scars of 1,000 victories. His people, the Garathian Berserkers, were legendary across the galaxy for their ability to enter a battle trance that made them immune to pain and fear. Korthak himself had never known defeat in single combat. He carried no weapons save for his bare hands, which had been surgically enhanced with submolecular claws capable of cutting through starship hulls. His entire body was a weapon, trained since childhood to destroy anything that opposed him. If anyone could subdue the war beast through pure physical dominance, it would be him. The beast's 3 heads turned toward the new arrival, studying him with those glowing eyes. For a moment, the arena fell silent except for the creature's slow, rumbling breathing. Then Korthak threw back his head and released the traditional Gorathian battle cry, a roar that echoed off the arena walls and sent tremors through the observation decks. The war beast responded with its own roar from all 3 heads simultaneously. The sound was unlike anything most spectators had ever heard, a harmonized bellow that seemed to come from the depths of space itself. Several beings in the crowd covered their auditory organs and fled their seats. Korthak charged forward without hesitation, his enhanced legs carrying him across the arena floor at impossible speed. He leaped at the last moment, aiming for the beast's middle head with claws extended. It was the same tactic that had brought down the legendary starworms of Proxima 7. The beast moved with surprising speed for something so massive. Its left head swung around and caught Korthak in midair, powerful jaws clamping down on his torso. The Garathian's claws raked across the beast's armored skin, but left only shallow scratches that healed within seconds. Korthak roared in pain and fury as the beast shook him like a child's toy. His enhanced bones, designed to withstand the pressure of gas-giant atmospheres, began to crack under the tremendous force of the creature's bite. He struck again and again at the head holding him, but his most powerful attacks barely registered. With a casual motion, the war beast flung Korthak across the arena. The Garathian warrior struck the far wall with enough force to leave a crater in the reinforced material. He slid to the ground and lay still, his chest rising and falling in shallow gasps. Medical teams rushed to retrieve him as the crowd sat in stunned silence. Korthak the Unbreakable had lasted less than 2 minutes. Admiral Vexithara's second pair of eyes closed in disappointment. She had hoped that raw physical power might succeed where finesse had failed. But the war beast seemed to adapt to each new challenge, learning from every encounter. 3 days later, the arena was prepared for another attempt. This time, the challenger was Psi Master Yonela of the Ethereal Conclave. The floating humanoid figure appeared to be made of crystallized thought, her transparent body flickering with internal light. She was one of only 7 beings in the galaxy who had achieved 10th-level psychic mastery. Unlike previous challengers, Yonela made no aggressive moves. She simply hovered above the arena floor, her arms spread wide as she reached out with her mind toward the war beast. Psychic energy danced around her form like captured lightning. The beast's middle head tilted upward to study her, its glowing eyes meeting her crystalline gaze. For long minutes, neither moved. The crowd leaned forward, sensing that something significant was happening even though they could see nothing. Then the war beast shuddered, its massive form trembling as Yonela's psychic probe penetrated deeper into its consciousness. The Psi Master's body blazed brighter as she encountered the creature's mental defenses and began to systematically dismantle them. "She's doing it," whispered Commander Zektor, his mandibles clicking with excitement. "She's actually making contact." But even as he spoke, something changed. The war beast's trembling stopped abruptly, and its 3 heads turned toward Yonela with what could only be described as amusement. The creature's own psychic emanations, previously undetectable, suddenly blazed to life. Yonela screamed, a sound like glass breaking in a hurricane. Her crystalline form began to crack and splinter as the war beast's mental counterattack overwhelmed her defenses. She plummeted toward the arena floor, her body losing cohesion as her consciousness scattered. Emergency teleportation fields caught her before she hit the ground, but the damage was done. Yonela's form continued to flicker erratically as medical teams rushed her to the psychic rehabilitation wing. It would be months before she could even think coherently again, if ever. The war beast settled back onto its 6 legs and resumed its patient waiting. If anything, it seemed more alert now, as if the psychic duel had energized it. Admiral Vexithara stared down at the creature with growing dread. If neither physical force nor mental power could subdue it, what hope did they have? The invasion fleet would reach the core worlds in less than 6 months. Without a breakthrough soon, billions would die. The next challenger came from the technological apex of galactic civilization. The synthetic collective sent their most advanced combat unit, designation Prime 7. The humanoid machine appeared in the arena without fanfare, its chrome surface reflecting the arena's lights like a mirror. Prime 7 represented the culmination of artificial intelligence development, possessing computational power that exceeded most planetary networks. Its body was constructed from exotic materials that existed only in laboratory conditions, giving it strength and durability that surpassed even Garathian berserkers. More importantly, it felt no fear, no pain, no doubt. It would analyze the war beast's capabilities with perfect objectivity and exploit any weakness it discovered. The machine walked calmly across the arena floor, its sensors scanning the creature from every angle. Weapon ports opened along its arms and torso, revealing an array of directed energy weapons that could cut through asteroid belts. The war beast watched this approach with apparent interest, its head swaying hypnotically. When Prime 7 came within 50 meters, the machine stopped and raised both arms. Energy beams lanced out, striking the creature's armored hide with enough power to vaporize mountains. For a moment, the arena filled with brilliant light and superheated plasma. When the glare faded, the war beast stood unchanged. Its armor had absorbed the energy completely, not even glowing from the heat. Prime 7 recalculated instantly and switched to different weapon systems. Particle beams, gravitational distorters, and temporal displacement fields struck the creature in rapid succession. Each attack was perfectly aimed and calibrated for maximum effect against the beast's known characteristics. The war beast endured the barrage with what might have been patience. Then it moved. The creature's right head opened its mouth and released a focused sonic pulse that struck Prime 7 like a physical blow. The synthetic's perfect chrome surface began to ripple and distort as the sound waves disrupted its molecular structure. Its advanced computational matrices couldn't process the chaotic resonance patterns fast enough to adapt. Within seconds, Prime 7's body began to collapse in on itself. The exotic materials that gave it such strength became liabilities as they responded unpredictably to the beast's sonic assault. The machine tried to retreat, but its legs could no longer support its weight properly. The war beast's middle head reached down and gently picked up the failing synthetic in its massive jaws. There was almost something tender about the gesture, as if the creature recognized Prime 7's artificial nature and felt some form of kinship. Then the beast bit down, and Prime 7 ceased to exist. The crowd erupted in shocked gasps and scattered applause. 3 more challengers had failed, each representing the pinnacle of their respective species' capabilities. Physical power, psychic mastery, and technological supremacy had all proven inadequate. Admiral Vexithera felt despair settling over her like a cold shroud. They had tried everything, deployed their greatest champions, and achieved nothing. The war beast remained as dangerous and uncontrollable as ever. Perhaps, suggested Commander Zektor quietly, we should consider other options. The humans have been requesting permission to make an attempt. Vexithara's 4 arms gestured dismissively. Humans? They've barely achieved interstellar travel. What could they possibly accomplish that our greatest warriors have failed to do? They have been studying our previous attempts with great interest. Their representative claims to have developed a unique approach. The Admiral's primary eyes fixed on her subordinate with annoyance. Humans are a primitive species, with no significant military achievements. They've participated in exactly 3 minor conflicts since joining the Galactic Council, and their performance was adequate at best. It was true that humans had shown some promise in their recent engagements. They displayed unusual tactical flexibility and an odd tendency to survive situations that should have destroyed them. But they possessed no special weapons, no advanced technology, no psychic abilities worth mentioning. Most galactic species viewed them as pleasant enough beings who might eventually develop into something useful, given a few thousand years of evolution. Their homeworld was considered strategically insignificant, producing nothing that couldn't be found elsewhere in abundance. With respect, Admiral, Zektor continued, we have exhausted our conventional options. The war beast has proven itself superior to our strongest warriors, most gifted psionics, and most advanced technology. At this point, what do we have to lose? Vexithara looked down at the arena where the war beast had settled back into its waiting posture. The creature's three heads moved independently, each studying different sections of the observation deck as if counting the beings present. The invasion fleet would arrive in 173 days. If they couldn't find a way to control or understand these creatures before then, the core worlds would face the same devastation that had already consumed the outer territories. "Very well," she said finally. "Contact the human delegation. Tell them they may make their attempt. But make it clear that we hold little hope for success. This is likely to be nothing more than an expensive form of suicide." As Zektor hurried away to deliver the message, Vexithara remained at the observation window. The war beast seemed to sense her attention, and its middle head turned upward to meet her gaze. For a moment, she could have sworn she saw something like anticipation in those glowing eyes. The thought sent a chill through her scaled frame. The creature had defeated every champion they could field, but it hadn't killed any of them outright. Even Prime 7's destruction had been quick and efficient rather than needlessly brutal. Was it possible that the war beast was playing with them, testing their capabilities while holding back its true power? The implications of such intelligence were terrifying to contemplate. She dismissed the thought as paranoia. The creature was dangerous enough without attributing human-like cunning to its actions. But as she watched it settle down for another period of patient waiting, she couldn't shake the feeling that it was looking forward to whatever came next. The human delegation would arrive within the week. Vexithara found herself curious despite her skepticism. What could the galaxy's newest and least impressive species possibly bring to this challenge that hadn't already been tried? Below in the arena, the war beast's three heads moved in what might have been a nod of acknowledgement. The contest was about to enter a new phase, and something deep in the creature's ancient consciousness stirred with interest. The humans were coming. The human delegation arrived aboard a modest transport vessel that looked almost apologetic next to the massive warships filling the space around the arena station. Ambassador Sarah Chen stepped off the shuttle with only two companions, a xenobiologist named Dr. Marcus Webb, and someone who introduced himself simply as Tom. Admiral Vexithara studied the humans from her position on the receiving deck. They were smaller than most galactic species, with none of the obvious physical advantages that marked successful warrior races. Their skin was soft-looking, their frames appeared fragile, and they possessed no visible natural weapons. Ambassador Chen was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and kind eyes that seemed to take in everything around her with quiet interest. Dr. Webb appeared younger, his enthusiasm barely contained as he gazed at the alien technology surrounding them. But it was the third human who drew Vexithara's attention. Tom looked to be in his 30s, with weathered hands and a calm demeanor that reminded the Admiral of veteran soldiers she had known. He wore simple clothing and carried no visible equipment, but there was something about the way he moved that suggested hidden depths. "Thank you for allowing us this opportunity," Ambassador Chen said, her voice carrying the formal tones of diplomatic training. "We understand that many have already attempted to communicate with the creature, and we don't underestimate the challenge ahead." "Communication?" Vexithara's four arms crossed skeptically. "Our greatest warriors have tried to subdue the beast through force, our most powerful psychics have attempted mental contact, and our most advanced technology has proven useless. What makes you believe that simple communication is possible?" Dr. Webb stepped forward eagerly. "We've been analyzing the recordings of all previous attempts, and we've noticed some interesting patterns in the creature's behavior. It's not just responding to threats with violence. It's making choices about how to respond, which suggests a level of intelligence that goes beyond animal instinct." "The Psi Master Yun Ella reached the same conclusion," Commander Zektor interjected. The creature's psychic counterattack nearly destroyed her mind permanently. "That's exactly our point," Tom spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but carrying clearly across the deck. "Every approach so far has been based on dominance. Physical dominance, mental dominance, technological dominance. But what if the creature doesn't respond to dominance at all?" Vexithara's primary eyes narrowed. "You're suggesting that the war beast requires a different approach entirely?" "We're suggesting that maybe it's not a war beast at all," Dr. Webb said. "At least not in the way we understand the term. Our analysis of Krillian society indicates that these creatures serve multiple roles beyond simple warfare. They're also companions, partners, and in some cases, teachers." The Admiral's skepticism was evident in every line of her scaled features. "Companions? That thing has destroyed entire cities. It killed 60,000 Krillian civilians during the initial capture operation, while defending itself against an unprovoked attack," Tom pointed out gently. "From its perspective, it was probably fighting for its life against unknown aggressors. The fact that it allowed itself to be captured at all suggests it was trying to minimize casualties. Once it realized continued resistance would only lead to more destruction." Ambassador Chen nodded. "We'd like to request some time to observe the creature before making our attempt. Understanding its current behavioral patterns will be crucial for establishing meaningful contact." Vexithara gestured for them to follow her toward the observation deck. "Very well, but understand that time is limited. The Krillian invasion fleet will reach the core worlds in less than 6 months. If you cannot produce results quickly, we will have no choice but to consider more extreme options." The humans spent the next 3 days in almost constant observation of the war beast. They watched how it moved during different parts of the station's day cycle, how it responded to various stimuli, and most importantly, how it interacted with the automated systems that maintained its captivity. Tom noticed things that others had missed. The creature never tested its barriers when maintenance crews were present, as if it understood that escape attempts might endanger innocent beings. It moved more slowly when observation groups included children from diplomatic families, reducing the intimidation factor of its massive presence. Most tellingly, it had established what appeared to be routines. Each morning, it would perform a series of movements that seemed almost ritualistic, stretching each massive leg and rotating its 3 heads in a specific pattern. It would eat its provided food at precise intervals, and it spent several hours each day in what could only be described as meditation, all 3 heads lowered and eyes closed. "It's homesick," Dr. Webb concluded on the 3rd day. "These behavioral patterns are consistent with captive animals trying to maintain connection to their natural environment. But the complexity suggests something far beyond animal intelligence." Tom nodded thoughtfully. "The question is whether it's willing to communicate with us, or if it's simply enduring captivity until an opportunity for escape presents itself." Admiral Vexithara had grown increasingly impatient with their prolonged observation period. "Your analysis is fascinating," she said with poorly concealed sarcasm. "But observation will not help us control the creature. We need to establish dominance before the invasion fleet arrives." "With respect, Admiral," Tom replied, "dominance may be exactly the wrong approach. Every species that's tried to dominate this creature has failed. Maybe it's time to try partnership instead." "Partnership?" Commander Zektor's mandibles clicked with disbelief. "It's a war beast, not a diplomatic envoy." "Is it?" Ambassador Chen asked. "We've reviewed the intelligence reports from the captured Krillian territories. These creatures aren't just weapons of war. They serve as community leaders, judges in disputes, and teachers for young Krillians. They're integral to Krillian society in ways that go far beyond military applications." Tom stood and walked closer to the observation window. The war beast's middle head turned to look up at him, those glowing eyes meeting his gaze directly. For a moment, human and creature studied each other across the vast distance between species. I'd like to try something, Tom said quietly. But it will require some preparation, and I'll need certain materials from our ship. Vexithara's patience finally snapped. Enough delays. If you're going to make an attempt, do it now or step aside for more conventional solutions. Very well. Tom turned to face her with that same calm demeanor. But I'll need the arena cleared of all spectators except essential personnel. What I'm going to try will work better without an audience. Impossible, the Admiral replied immediately. The galactic media is covering these attempts extensively. Removing the audience would suggest that we're hiding something. Ambassador Chen stepped forward smoothly. Admiral, we understand the political considerations, but some forms of communication require privacy to be effective. If our approach succeeds, you'll have recordings to share with the media. If it fails, you'll have lost nothing except a small amount of time. After considerable debate, Vexithara agreed to limit the audience to essential personnel only. The vast arena, which had held 80,000 spectators for previous attempts, now held fewer than 50 beings. Tom walked alone onto the arena floor, carrying nothing but a small device that Dr. Webb had assembled from components in their ship's laboratory. The war beast watched his approach with obvious interest, its three heads tracking his movement with predatory focus. But instead of stopping at a safe distance like previous challengers, Tom continued walking until he stood directly beneath the creature's middle head. At this range, he could feel the heat radiating from its massive body and hear the deep rumble of its breathing. The observation deck held its collective breath. Tom was close enough for the beast to crush him with a casual movement, well within range of its devastating sonic weapons. Yet he showed no signs of fear or aggression. "Hello," Tom said in a normal speaking voice. "My name is Tom. I know you probably can't understand my words, but I hope you can sense my intentions." The war beast's middle head lowered until it was only meters away from the tiny human. Its glowing eyes studied him with unmistakable intelligence. The other two heads moved to flank positions, but there was no aggression in the posture, only curiosity. Tom activated the device in his hands. It was a simple translation matrix, designed to convert basic emotional concepts into harmonic frequencies that many species could interpret instinctively. Dr. Webb had programmed it with concepts like friendship, respect, and cooperation. "I'm not here to fight you or dominate you," Tom continued, the device humming softly as it converted his intentions into a series of gentle tones. "I'm here to ask for your help." The war beast's three heads tilted simultaneously, a movement that would have been comical if not for the creature's tremendous size and obvious power. It was clearly processing this unprecedented approach. Tom slowly sat down on the arena floor, making himself as non-threatening as possible. "My people are young and small compared to the great civilizations of this galaxy. We don't have powerful weapons or advanced technology, but we do have something that others seem to have forgotten." He paused, letting the translation device convey his emotional state of calm honesty. "We remember that strength comes in many forms: physical strength, mental strength, technological strength, but also the strength that comes from understanding others, from working together instead of trying to conquer each other." The war beast's massive form settled slightly, its 6 legs spreading wider as it lowered itself closer to the ground. It was still enormous compared to Tom, but the gesture reduced the intimidation factor considerably. "Your people are coming," Tom continued, his voice remaining steady despite the historic nature of what was happening. "The galaxy sees them as invaders, as enemies to be stopped. But you're not just a weapon, are you? You're something much more important." The creature's right head opened its mouth, but instead of the devastating sonic roar that had destroyed Prime 7, it released a series of low, modulated sounds. The translation device picked up the frequencies and converted them into patterns that Tom's brain could interpret as emotional concepts. Sadness, loneliness, confusion. "You miss home," Tom said softly. "You miss your people, your purpose, your place in the world. Being here, in this arena, treated like a monster to be tamed, it's not what you are." More sounds from the creature, and this time the translation was clearer. The war beast was trying to communicate, sharing emotions and concepts that it had kept locked inside during months of captivity. Duty, protection, sorrow for necessary violence, fear for its people's future. You were trying to protect them, Tom realized. When you fought during the capture operation, you weren't being aggressive. You were being protective. And now you're worried about what will happen to your people if the galaxy continues to see them as nothing but invaders. The creature's middle head lowered until it was nearly touching the ground in front of Tom. The gesture was unmistakable. Respect, recognition, and something that might have been hope. "Maybe we can help each other," Tom suggested. "My people understand what it's like to be underestimated, to be seen as insignificant or primitive. But we also understand that every species has value. Every perspective brings something unique to the galaxy." The war beast's three heads moved in what was clearly a coordinated response. The sound it made was unlike anything it had produced before, a harmonized tone that the translation device interpreted as agreement mixed with cautious optimism. From the observation deck, Admiral Vexisthara watched in stunned silence as the most dangerous creature in galactic history engaged in what could only be described as a conversation with a human who possessed no special powers or advanced technology. "How is this possible?" she whispered. Dr. Webb, monitoring the translation device from his position in the observation area, provided the answer. Tom's not trying to dominate or control the creature. He's treating it as an equal, recognizing its intelligence and respecting its emotional state. It's the one thing nobody else thought to try. Commander Zektor's mandibles clicked nervously. But can this conversation actually solve our problem? The invasion fleet is still coming. Below in the arena, Tom was asking the war beast about its people, their culture, their reasons for expanding into galactic space. The creature's responses, filtered through the translation device, painted a picture of a species driven not by conquest, but by necessity. Their homeworld was dying, its resources exhausted after millions of years of civilization. The Krillians weren't invading for conquest or glory, but for survival. They needed new worlds, new resources, new hope for their children's future. "What if there was another way?" Tom asked. "What if instead of fighting, we could find worlds that need inhabitants? Planets that are rich in resources but underpopulated? Or systems that would benefit from Krillian knowledge and abilities?" The war beast's response was immediate and complex. Hope, yes, but also skepticism. Too many misunderstandings, too much fear and mistrust on both sides. The patterns of conflict were already set. "Then maybe it's time to change the patterns," Tom said. "But that's something we'll need to work on together. Are you willing to help us try?" The creature's three heads rose simultaneously, and for a moment, its massive form was silhouetted against the arena lights like a mountain coming to life. Then, slowly and deliberately, each head nodded in agreement. The first step toward peace had been taken, but Tom knew that 3 weeks after Tom's initial contact with the war beast, the arena had been transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history, a diplomatic meeting ground between species that had been at war for over a year. The creature now moved freely throughout the enlarged space, its containment fields deactivated after it had demonstrated its commitment to peaceful cooperation. Tom spent hours each day in conversation with the being he had learned to call Kethmore, which translated roughly to speaker for the young in the Krillian language. Dr. Webb had upgraded the translation device significantly, creating a sophisticated interface that allowed for complex philosophical and political discussions. What they had discovered about Krillian society challenged every assumption the galactic community had made about the invasion. The dying of homeworld is not recent thing, Kethmore explained through the harmonic patterns that had become familiar to Tom. Many generations we know this time comes. We prepare, we search, we hope for peaceful solution. Admiral Vexithara sat in the observation area, still struggling to accept what she was witnessing. The creature that had defeated her greatest warriors now served tea to a human using a specialized dispenser that Tom had designed to accommodate its massive heads. "You're telling us that the Krillians attempted peaceful contact before resorting to military action?" she asked through the translation system. "Many times," Kethmore confirmed. "We send messages, we offer trade, we share knowledge of worlds that need no inhabitants. Always the response is fear. Always the answer is weapons." Tom nodded thoughtfully. "That matches what we found in the Galactic Archives. 17 different first contact attempts by Krillian explorers over the past 50 years. All of them were either ignored or met with military responses. The revelation had shaken the foundations of how the galactic community understood the war. The Krillians weren't mindless conquerors. They were refugees, driven to desperation by the galaxy's refusal to acknowledge their situation. But surely they must have understood that taking worlds by force would provoke retaliation, Commander Zektor argued. The destruction they've caused cannot be excused by desperation. Kethmore's 3 heads moved in the gesture Tom had learned indicated deep sadness. When children starve, when elders choose death so young ones might live, when homeworld breaks apart beneath feet, what choice remains? We tried peace. Peace was rejected. We chose survival over honor. What about the war beasts? Dr. Webb asked. If your people are peaceful refugees, why did you deploy weapons of such tremendous destructive power? We are not war beasts, Kethmore replied, a note of what might have been humor in the translation. We are Kethvarai, the speakers. We guide young ones. We judge disputes. We preserve knowledge. In war, we become what war requires. But war is not our purpose. The distinction was crucial. The creatures weren't biological weapons created for conquest. They were the intellectual and spiritual leaders of Krillian society, forced into military roles by circumstances beyond their control. So there are others like you among the invasion fleet? Tom asked. Many others. We suffer in this role, but we protect our people as we must. Without us, the young ones would die in space between stars. Tom stood and walked to the communication console that Dr. Webb had set up. Kethmore, would you be willing to contact the fleet to tell them about what we've discussed here? The massive creature's response was immediate and powerful, a harmonic blast that nearly overwhelmed the translation system. When the device finally processed the emotional content, the meaning was clear. Overwhelming relief mixed with desperate hope. You would listen to speakers? You would consider peace even after war has begun? Admiral Vexithara stepped forward, her 4 arms spread in a gesture of formal address. Before we commit to anything, I need to understand what the Krillians truly want. Not conquest, apparently, but what exactly? Through Kethmore, the conversation that followed reshaped everything the galaxy thought it knew about the invasion. The Krillians needed approximately 40 worlds to sustain their population, but they didn't need to take them by force. They possessed advanced terraforming technology and could transform marginal worlds into thriving colonies. More importantly, they offered tremendous value in return. Their biotechnology was centuries ahead of galactic standards. Their knowledge of space phenomena was unmatched, and their cultural emphasis on consensus building could help resolve conflicts that had plagued the galaxy for generations. Why didn't you lead with this information when you first made contact? Vexithara demanded. Because, Tom interjected quietly, they tried to. But every time they offered partnership, the galaxy's response was to demand submission first. They were told that peaceful settlement would only be considered after they proved their good intentions by surrendering unconditionally. Kethmore confirmed this with a series of complex harmonic patterns that conveyed frustration and sorrow. We are proud people. We bow to honor, not to conquest. When galaxy demands we kneel before proving worthiness, we choose war over shame. The phrase struck Tom with sudden understanding. The title War Beast wasn't just a description of their role in the conflict, it was a deliberate rejection of their true nature. By calling them war beasts instead of speakers, the galaxy had stripped them of their identity and reduced them to nothing more than weapons. What would it take, he asked carefully, for the speakers to consider ending the war? Not surrendering, but entering into genuine negotiations for peaceful settlement? Kethmore's response was swift and clear. Recognition. Acknowledgement that we are people, not beasts. That our need is real, our children's lives have value, our culture deserves respect. Give us honor, and we will kneel not in submission, but in partnership. Tom looked up at Admiral Vexithara with an expression that mixed hope and determination. We need to arrange a formal first contact. Not a military confrontation or a demand for surrender, but a real diplomatic meeting between equals. Impossible, the Admiral replied immediately. The fleet is already en route to the core worlds. Even if we wanted to negotiate, we couldn't stop the military response that's being prepared. Actually, Dr. Webb spoke up from his position at the communication array. We might be able to. Kethmore has been sending messages to the fleet since we established communication protocols. The other speakers are aware of what's happening here. Kethmore confirmed this with a gesture of acknowledgement. We share thoughts across great distances when necessary. Fleet speakers know of human proposal, know of possibility for peace. They wait for sign that Galaxy truly offers honor, not just clever trap. Tom turned to face the observation deck directly. Admiral, this is the opportunity we've been hoping for. A chance to end the war before it reaches the core worlds, to turn enemies into allies instead of just defeating them. And what exactly are you proposing? Vexithara asked. A formal ceremony of recognition. Acknowledge the Krillians as a refugee population rather than an invasion force. Offer them partnership instead of demanding surrender. Let their speakers maintain their dignity while working toward peaceful settlement. The debate that followed was intense and prolonged. Military commanders argued that negotiating from a position of weakness would set a dangerous precedent. Political leaders worried about the reaction from worlds that had already suffered under Krillian attacks. Economic advisors questioned whether the galaxy could afford to integrate such a large refugee population. But Tom had an answer that cut through all the objections. The cost of war, he said quietly, is always higher than the cost of peace. We've already lost 43 worlds and countless lives. How many more are we willing to sacrifice to avoid admitting that we might have been wrong about something? His words carried weight because everyone in the room had witnessed his success where their greatest champions had failed. Not through superior strength or technology, but through the simple recognition that intelligence and dignity exist in forms they hadn't expected. 3 days later, representatives from across the galaxy gathered in the arena for an unprecedented ceremony. The massive space had been reconfigured with careful attention to Krillian cultural preferences, creating an environment that honored both their traditions and those of the assembled diplomatic corps. Kethmore stood at the center of the arena, no longer a captive beast, but a recognized ambassador of his people. Tom stood beside him, serving as translator and advocate for a peace process that many still considered impossible. Admiral Vexithara stepped forward to deliver the formal statement that had been crafted through days of careful negotiation. We, the assembled representatives of the Galactic Council, acknowledge that the people known as Krillians are a refugee population seeking survival for their species. We recognize their speakers not as war beasts, but as the legitimate leaders and representatives of their people. We offer formal diplomatic status and the opportunity to negotiate peaceful settlement throughout galactic space. The translation device carried these words to Kethmore in harmonics that conveyed not just meaning, but the emotional weight of the moment. For the first time since his capture, the massive creature experienced something he had almost forgotten: hope for his people's future. Kethmore's response was delivered in the most formal harmonics of his language. Patterns that Tom had learned indicated the highest levels of respect and gratitude. We, the speakers for the young, accept this recognition with honor. We kneel not in defeat, but in partnership. Let our peoples learn from each other, grow together, and build future where all children may thrive. And then, in a gesture that would be remembered throughout galactic history, the enormous creature slowly lowered its massive heads until they touched the arena floor. It was not the submission of a conquered enemy, but the respectful acknowledgement of equals beginning a journey together. Tom knelt as well, placing his small human hand gently on the creature's armored head. Around the arena, other representatives began to kneel in recognition of the moment, understanding that they were witnessing something that would change the galaxy forever. The war was not yet over, but the foundation for peace had been laid. Within weeks, negotiation teams would work with Krillian speakers to identify suitable worlds for settlement. Cultural exchange programs would begin, allowing both sides to learn from each other's knowledge and perspectives. Most importantly, the galaxy had learned something that humans had always known but struggled to share. That strength comes not from the ability to dominate others, but from the wisdom to recognize their value and the courage to build something better together. In the months that followed, as refugee fleets were guided to new homes and former enemies became partners in exploration and development, historians would study the moment when everything changed. They would analyze the tactical failures that preceded it, the political negotiations that followed it, and the economic benefits that resulted from it. But Tom knew that the real victory had been much simpler. It had come from treating a being with intelligence and dignity, from listening instead of demanding, from offering partnership instead of requiring submission. The war beast had knelt not because it was forced to, but because it chose to. And in that choice, both species had found something more valuable than victory. They had found each other. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders yet to be discovered. Now, humans and Krillians would explore it together, along with all the other species who had learned that cooperation could accomplish what conquest never could. And in a small corner of space, on a station that had once housed the galaxy's most feared prisoner, a human named Tom continued his daily conversations with a being called Kethmore, building the understanding that would keep their peoples united for generations to come. The war was over, the peace had begun, and the universe was better for it. The real work was just beginning. Stopping a war that had already claimed dozens of worlds would require more than one conversation, no matter how historic. But as he looked up into the intelligent eyes of the war beast, he felt something that had been missing from every previous attempt: hope.